Well, good morning, everybody. David here. It's July the 30th. I'm getting the July report under the wire. I do have one more day tomorrow, but I'm trying to get this done for you today. And I thought that I would do it from out here on my back patio. We'll see how it goes. We'll have there will be the occasional car going by. You probably hear the birds and the cicadas because it's that time of year and that temperature. And so we'll just see how this goes. I hope you're doing well, and I've got some interesting things for you this month. Um, had a very amusing incident happen yesterday that's Lewis related that I'll have to tell you about. But before I get to that, just a few news items. First of all, no more movie news from Netflix about Narnia, so we'll just keep waiting on that. Another thing is that, as you know, the C.S. Lewis Foundation, every year they have these summer seminars over at the Kilns, and for many years now, the main speaker there has been Dr. Earl Palmer, a Presbyterian minister, is fairly well known, great guy, but he's getting up in years, and he was scheduled to do the seminar this coming summer, but he had to pull out, and so they brought Don King in from Montreat College, and Don King is a good speaker. He's a specialist on Lewis's poetry. Has published a number of books on Lewis's poetry, and he's also got a book on or two on Joy Davidman. So you might want to check those out if you haven't looked at any of his stuff before. And it looks like next summer they're going to back it off from 2 weeks to 1 week, and I believe they're going to have Jerry Root there. So things are changing there, but one of the things, and I would like for you to pray about this if you wouldn't mind, a very important thing about the foundation, and it's public knowledge that the current president needs to retire. He's just getting to that age, and he realizes that, and so they are publicly seeking a replacement for the president of the foundation. They're actually struggling to do that, and it's very important that they are able to find somebody because things could deteriorate rather quickly if they don't. So let us pray together that the Lord will provide someone, and also it's just there's something, some of it's a matter of just the board, that they will function in a way that will help lead. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying that the board we need to pray that they'll have the wisdom that they need to be able to lead this organization on to the next step. And speaking of boards, I sure would appreciate your praying for the study center here at UTC. I'm continuing to meet with people. I had a great conversation with a guy yesterday who not only teaches, but he's also been involved in administration at UTC. A great contact for being sure that we're understanding and the like political and administrative and state workings of things going on with the university. But things that I need prayer for. One of them is that over the next several months that the Lord will raise up a good solid board for this organization. Also, that we will have the funds that we need. I do have plenty of funds for pretty much any of the events I could possibly plan over the next year, which is really good. But we've got to grow beyond that, and I'm also going to need a salary. So, and whoever's going to replace me is going to need a salary, and 5-10 years from now. So, really need to have that need met there. And then I keep struggling with the name, and here's the problem. The problem is that there is already a C.S. Lewis Study Center. It's actually a study center that was started by the C.S. Lewis Foundation. They're not. Excuse me. I'm still working on my morning coffee. It's only affiliated with the consortium of Christian study centers. It's not an actual Christian study center in the consortium, but they're friends. And they call it the C.S. Lewis Study Center, and the C.S. Lewis Company over in Europe that Doug Gresham is in charge of is unhappy with their using C.S. Lewis's name for their study center. And the director of the consortium of study centers has told me, you want to get away from that, because we were thinking about it being the C.S. Lewis Study Center of Chattanooga. Lots of people, the guy I was talking to yesterday, love that idea of using that name, having that association. But I think to avoid legal complications and stay on the good side with C.S. Lewis Company, which I'd like to do, we need to avoid that. So we're struggling with the name, and so appreciate prayer about that. But anyway, I will be start firing that thing up. Coming in a few weeks here when classes start up at UTC, and we'll be having weekly meetings. Oh, and that's something else to pray about. We're going to have weekly meetings early Wednesday evenings. And there's a really great place at First Presbyterian I'd love for us to be able to use, but that's got to be confirmed, so please pray about that. Okay, now, let's see, what else can we talk about? All right, things that have been published recently that I think are good. Excuse me. Since Planet Narnia, ever popular, is anything that has to do with C.S. Lewis and the cosmos in which we live. And there is a new book called The Story of the Cosmos. It came out on the 16th of this month. It's brand new. And it's all about God's glory displayed in the heavens. And it's a collection of articles by different people. William Lane Craig is one of them. Michael Ward, Holly Ordway. She does one on Tolkien. Michael would, of course, talk about Lewis. Other people that you might know as well. So you'll want to check this out. Now, I will, of course, as usual, I'll have a link to the book on Amazon, and I also have a link to a YouTube video. It's on the Amazon site, but I thought I'd send you over to YouTube to see it. It's like a minute and a half promotional video on the book that you might find helpful. So it's called The Story of the Cosmos, and you can, like I say, I'll have the link for you below this video. Also, there's a gentleman who his name is Marc LiVecche, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm not really sure that I am. He's an interesting fella. He has done a lot of work, study on the just war concept and Christianity. And in fact, this last term, he has been over at Christ Church, Oxford, studying there. And since he was in Oxford, he had the opportunity to address the Oxford C.S. Lewis Society. And the topic of his address was C.S. Lewis, War, and the Christian Character. And I think I've told you before that they always record the audio of the lectures given at the society over there, but there just hasn't been the time and attention paid to systematically getting them online, so that they're shared. So they've got all these lectures just sitting somewhere that nobody can listen to. So it's sad. I've tried to do something about it, but Michael said, no, this is a student thing. If the students can't do it, then we'll just live with it. No, okay. But anyhow, this particular lecture, C.S. Lewis, War and the Christian Character, the audio that was recorded is online. It is on the providencemag.com website, along with the transcript. And so I will be linking that to you, and you can enjoy listening to that. The address it seems like it was about 40 minutes or so long, something like that. But the guy's good. It's worthwhile listening to. So a couple of things have just come out that are available now. I'm all the time scouting around trying to see if there's anything worthwhile to bring up to you. I don't need to tell you about the latest Narnia journal, that your teenage daughter can use, that sort of thing. I don't fool with that. Now, this last weekend, and one of the reasons why I'm a little bit later on this video is I wanted to wait until after I did this, but this last weekend I went to a L'Abri conference at Lipscomb up in Nashville, and they had several people from the Massachusetts and the Boston L'Abri. There's also a guy that's in Nashville now. I think he's moved to Nashville, who's served over at the Great England L'Abri for some time. At any rate, it was it's a typical Labrie thing. It was about Christianity and culture, but it was all the talks were really good, and the keynote was by Dick Keyes. Some of you may be familiar with Dick Keyes. He's been involved with Labrie for many years now, and I'm wanting to share with you some of the things that he had to say about the issue of our ministering Christ in a fragmented world. And there's some issues he gets into that kind of don't fit that title in a way, but then again they do. But I want to get into that. But first, before I do, if I have the time to do that, I might have to do a separate video on that. But before I do, I got to tell you about something that happened yesterday. It's so funny. I was meeting somebody at Rembrandt's coffee shop, speaking of coffee, and if you go to Rembrandt's, you know that they usually have some sort of a trivia question near the cash register, and if you can answer it, you get a free cup of coffee. So I've always got my eye on that, and I've been able to get free coffee several times there as a result. But yesterday, I'm expecting this guy to come over from UTC, and I buy a cup of coffee and a biscuit. And while I'm at the register, they bring up the trivia question to me, and they turn around, they show it to me. And of all things, guess what the trivia question was? Of all the Chronicles of Narnia stories, which one should be read first? And when they showed that to me, I went, oh no. And then I began to explain to them. I said, you've got a problem with your question because it has the word should in it. There are differences of opinion as to which should be read first. Is it The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or is it The Magician's Nephew? And the girl behind the cash register was going, it's The Magician's Nephew. Yeah, that's the answer, right? But I wasn't done with them yet. And there's like three staff people there. And I said, now look, here's the deal. C.S. Lewis, if I recall correctly, wrote in a letter that to a kid, I think it was, that you just read them, start with Magician's Nephew. Douglas Gresham disagrees, and actually most C.S. Lewis, all the C.S. Lewis scholars I know, the better ones, of course, that agree with me, believe that it ought to be The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. That's the way it's set up. But anyway, so I got into it with him, and I confess, I said, I should have of all the days not to read the trivia question. I'm the moderator of the C.S. Lewis Society here. It was just really funny. So what they did was they said, okay, we'll give you a free refill. I said, that's fine. And then what I did was I gave the free refill to the guy that was meeting me there, because what's been happening is I've either filled up my card or I've got the trivia question, whatever, and I always want, there's one professor that I want, it's like a tradition now, he always gets a free cup of coffee at Rembrandt's through me. But I pass it on to him. So anyway, pretty crazy. It's like, the opportunity, to get the trivia question, and I blow it. So there it is. But speaking of which, now, it got me thinking about the issue, and I got back into this again a little bit. It turns out that there's one letter that Lewis wrote in 1957. Excuse me. And this boy wrote to C.S. Lewis asking them about how to read them. He and his mother were disagreeing about the order. And here's what C.S. Lewis wrote. He said, I think I agree with your order for reading the books more than your mother's. The series was not planned beforehand as she thinks. Okay, so she apparently was thinking numerically. When I wrote The Lion, I did not know I was going to write any more. Then I wrote Prince Caspian as a sequel, and still didn't think that there'd be any more. And when I had done The Voyage, I felt quite sure it would be the last one. And you can understand why, because those are the Pevensey children, that's the Pevensey children trilogy there. But I found I was wrong, so perhaps it does not matter very much in which order anyone read them. Now that's interesting. Lewis says perhaps it doesn't really matter. But he does seem to prefer starting with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, because he was disagreeing with the boy's mother, who apparently thought about it all planned out ahead of time, and I assume that means 1 through 7. Now Douglas Gresham. There's something that's interesting here, is that in the newer editions, HarperCollins has taken out some of the front page stuff, the like subtitles and things that had been in the books, and they're pushing, start with number 1, Magician's Nephew, and go on from there. That's the order that they want us to read them in. And Douglas Gresham said, I actually asked Jack himself what order he preferred, and he thought that they should be read in. And he said he thought they should be read in the order of Narnian chronology. Now, Narnian chronology then would be the historic chronology, starting with number 1. So I said, why don't you go, and he was talking to HarperCollins, and so he told HarperCollins, he says, why don't you go with what Jack himself wanted? And so Doug admits the fact that it's his fault that HarperCollins is promoting the 1 through 7 instead of The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe first. He seems to think that that's still the best way to do it. So I was incorrect when I told the staff at Rembrandt's that Douglas Gresham thought you ought to start with Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. I thought for sure he had, but in this particular note, he is saying, I'm not a bit ashamed of having told HarperCollins to go 1 through 7. But like I say, there's still a debate about this, and I want us to look for just a little bit at Alistair McGrath's biography, because he has a couple of pages in here on this issue, and he does a really good job, and he has some very interesting insights. And before I refer to this, I want to show you this chart that he has in here. The chart in the first section, it is the order in which the books were written. The next one is the order in which they were published. And then the last one is the internal chronology, or the historic, the way that, the internal chronology I think is important, because if you'll recall, now come to think of it too, I was forgetting about this. There's actually 4 Pevensey books, aren't there? Now I know the Pevenseys show up at the end of The Last Battle, but everybody shows up at the end of The Last Battle except for Susan. But if you remember, The Horse and His Boy, as McGrath reminds us here, The Horse and His Boy actually takes place contemporaneously with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So it should actually chronologically come between The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe and Prince Caspian, because you recall that the Horse and His Boy takes place at a time when the Pevensey children were of marriageable maybe age, right? So, and so there's actually 4 Pevensey books there, right? Except that, of course, in Horse and Boy, the Pevenseys aren't the main characters; they're just involved there. It's actually a book that gives a lot of insight in Archenland and the royal family there. But be those things as they may, let's talk about the order. McGrath says that you could actually read them in these 3 ways. You could read them in the order they were written, which is one way. The publication is another. Internal chronology, if you put The Horse and His Boy between Lion, and Witch, and Wardrobe, Now here's the deal. And I'd forgotten about this, but in order of writing, The Magician's Nephew was the last to be written. That's interesting. The Last Battle was number 6. Magician's Nephew was number 7. That's interesting. Let me read this. The collected edition of the Chronicles of Narnia, published by HarperCollins, includes the statement, although The Magician's Nephew was written several years after C.S. Lewis first began the Chronicles of Narnia, he wanted it to be read as the first book in the series. And this is where HarperCollins is following Douglas Gresham. HarperCollins is happy to present these books in the order in which Professor Lewis preferred. But as we know from what Lewis said to that boy in 1957, to him it kind of didn't really matter. He said it does not matter very much in which order anyone reads them. Then McGrath brings up this point. He says Lewis's essay on criticism emphasizes the importance of establishing the chronology of composition in the interpretation of a series of works, noting, for example, some influential misreadings of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings that arise on account of confusion on this matter. Furthermore, Lewis is adamant that the author of a book is not necessarily the best and is never a perfect judge of how it is to be read and interpreted, which is interesting for Lewis to say that. Excuse me. I mean, I'm honestly getting a dry throat here. Sorry. And so McGrath says, we ought to give due weight to these things. And he mentions how it is that the horse and his boy happens during the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So, what is the right chronology? He says and I just totally agree with this, the most significant difficulty with reading 1 through 7 is the Magician's Nephew, because it assumes that you already know who Aslan is. He says anyone who's read The Magician's Nephew already knows a lot about Aslan. Excuse me. I'm mixing it up. If you have read The Magician's Nephew first, then you've learned an awful lot about Aslan. If you then read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, then, if you remember, in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Aslan is introduced very slowly and very mysteriously. You remember the first time you ever hear the name, it's around the table in the beaver's den. And it's like, who is this person? What is this? And you gradually begin to learn about Aslan. I'm sorry, I bet this book is making noise on the computer. And so if you've read The Magician's Nephew, you already know all this stuff about him, and it spoils, well, there goes my paper. It spoils the way he's introduced in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Now, the way he's introduced in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has such a dramatic effect. It's just so good and intriguing. And also, how are you introduced to Narnia? We know that in The Magician's Nephew, the kids get to Narnia, with the magic rings and stuff like that, and the pool, the pool's in the middle of the world. But in Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, you've got this classic scene of Lucy in the wardrobe, and Lucy she's basically the spiritual leader of the Pevensey family and of the kids, and so little Lucy is you're introduced to her, and she just has this huge role for a significant section of the whole chronology. You see, so McGrath is saying you've got a bit of a problem here if you read Magician's Nephew first. It's like it spoils the effect that Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe can have on you. I'm going to skip over some stuff and just read this part right here. Finally, there is a clear and generally overlooked literary clue to Lewis's true intentions in the subtitles of 3 of its novels. And he goes to the subtitles, which he says you don't always see these days. And he points this one out, and that is that 2 of the books had the subtitle "A Story for Children." A Story for Children. And the 2 books are The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and The Last Battle. So what he goes on to argue about, and by the way, if you want to read this if you happen to have McGrath and you want to read this, it starts around page 272, I believe. I just pulled out, page 272. Well, I've got a pre-published edition, so hopefully it's around there. But anyhow, so here's the deal. Lewis, The Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, A Story for Children. The Last Battle, A Story for Children. And Lewis knows what he's doing. And so these shared subtitles bracket the whole series. And that subtitle, A Story for Children, is not A Magician's Nephew. So if you take that as an indicator, where the fact that Lewis seems to be bracketing these whole things, and it's the last battle, it just really looks like you got to start with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and go on from there. So then, if you did that, then you would not be reading according to historical chronology, but you could be doing it probably the order of publication, because then it would be The Lion, Prince Caspian, Voyage of Dawn Treader, Silver Chair, Horse and His Boy, Magician's Nephew, and Last Battle. The first four there with the Silver Chair, how Eustace comes back, there's like a continuity between those four. And then Horse and His Boy, Magician's Nephew are kind of like just sort of thrown in there. I'm trying to think what the right, but you get the idea that they're additional material besides those first four that are so important. And then you get the Last Battle. Oh well, enough of that. I have kept you here for 26 minutes. I'm not going to keep you any longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload this video and get this to you this afternoon. I've got to go off right now, and then I suspect later this afternoon I'll record a video for you about Dick Keyes' comments from the L'Abri conference, and it's going to intermesh with C.S. Lewis's Weight of Glory, and because I've got some of my own comments to make in there. I just found that the meditations just very helpful, and so I want to share that with you. So let me head off right now, and I'll be back with you soon. Bye.